3 years behind on the mortgage repayment. We issued the notices. They did vacate. And I got a phone call, I think it was like 2:30, 3 in the morning, from the court bailiff who was attending with the Queensland Fire Services. They'd set fire to their home. They actually burnt the home down rather than hand it to the bank, but you also don't want to destroy people's lives in the process. So, and there's a big difference between debtors who can't pay versus debtors who won't pay. It's definitely a mindset thing. And for people who can't, so I'm talking people who are, say, jobless, homeless, they've lost everything, they have nothing left to lose. Bankrupting them, to be honest, is probably throwing good money after bad, because you're not going to get your money back. Versus, say, the businessman who it's a matter of principle, and over his dead body is paying anything. He could if he wanted to, but he's not going to voluntarily.
Sometimes I think it might be because they don't want to give up the fight yet, because they feel like they need to keep fighting, whether it's because they're enjoying the feeling of litigation or fighting, or they don't feel vindicated and they haven't felt that sense of relief that it's over.
But our legal system doesn't have, we can't legislate good behaviour amongst people. And that is often where the real nuance comes in, because a lot of creditors are businesses and the debtors are people. So we've got this disconnect, because for the individuals who owe the money, it is personal, it is emotional based. And for your creditors, it's money based. And I figured out what I do. But sometimes, you know, you can have all the bits of paper in the world, but if this person has quit their job so that you can't enforce the garnishing of wages on them, so they're not working, they're hiding out in their neighbours, cousins, hairdressers, you know, granny flat.
So Kirsten, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about your role as a debt collector and what that means. You know, coming from a legal background, I'm sure you didn't really think that when you think of the debt collector in your head, you think of like this big, staunch person that's chasing after people, maybe with some firearms in their pocket or something like that. And when I see you, I see a smiley, beautiful face, and you know, it's not really what you kind of imagine or what you hear about in the movies. So tell us about how you kind of got to this position and what you do on a day-to-day basis as a debt collector.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me, Hader. Yeah, we were saying I've been doing this for 19 years admitted. Today's my admission day, 19 years. So there must be something that I like about the job. 20 years in. I've never had guns in my pocket, saddles blazing like a Lincoln lawyer sort of thing. It's much more subdued than that. I have spent a lot of time in a courtroom. I've always done insolvency, debt collection, debt recoveries, anything involving money, preferably other people's money, whether that's secured, unsecured debts, and ranging from $5,000 to lots and lots and lots of zeros. 50 million, I think, is the biggest case.
Before you go on, I just wanted to clarify, because this is something that is going to come up frequently in this discussion, secured versus unsecured debt. So you just kind of touched on it briefly, but let's expand on that so people can understand what the difference is there.
So a secured debt is where you actually have something tangible to secure your debt. So the easiest for people to understand is vehicle finance, and that finance is linked to the vehicle that you are driving, or a mortgage of your house. The house is the security for the mortgage. You actually have something that you could go and take back in part payment of the money that you've lent. Unsecured is, say, your groceries. You have paid money for hopefully a product. Perhaps that person wants their product back. There's nothing that they could go and get back. You've eaten it. You've eaten the groceries.
Yeah.
That's unsecured versus secured. And there's different things that you, as a debt recovery solicitor, there's different aspects that you do, different avenues that you go down, depending on the amount of the debt and also whether it's secured or unsecured.
Okay, cool. So help me understand here. Is it kind of like the movies, like if you haven't made your payments on the car, there's going to be somebody that just rocks up with a tow truck and says, you haven't made your payments, and they put your car on the tow truck and then just tow it off? Does that actually happen here in Australia?
It does. It's a little less dramatic.
Normally there's the guy chasing after being like, no, what are you doing? You know?
Maybe. I have had an agent shot at trying to recover a vehicle. We're still friends. He wouldn't do service for me after that for a little while, but he did take some other jobs. But yes, that's the most dramatic one. But generally, it's a little bit more boring before that. You send notices to the person, please pay this is the finance, this is the debt, this is what you're behind by, you've got X amount of days to pay it. If you don't pay it, the company will take possession of it. The hardest part is normally actually finding where the vehicle is. And then once the agent locates the vehicle, you put it on a tow truck, zoot off with it, the finance company will sell it. There's often a shortfall, and then you go after the individual for that shortfall.
Okay. And I guess if it's a house and it's there, that's not moving anywhere. That's probably a lot easier to locate. And I think that example is a little bit easier for people to understand. Like if you're not making repayments on the house, bank's going to come in and, they're going to repossess it and put it up for sale.
Yes.
But even in that instance, if we could dig a little bit deeper, what happens if you don't leave the house in that situation? Or what happens if you're in the car and you say, I'm not getting out of the car? In that instance, what's the next kind of step that needs to be done to escalate things?
So if you're taking possession of a vehicle, I've done repossessions of a vehicle, a plane, yacht, houses. Generally, the court bailiff will go out with the relevant paperwork and they're accompanied by police. If you refuse to leave the house, you get orders for eviction, and the police will assist you to physically leave.
Yeah, okay.
And you normally have, if you're onto it, you'll have a locksmith arranged and have the locks changed. I have done one where we had the woman physically removed from the property 4 times. She kept breaking back in. And if you're in the vehicle, you will be assisted from the vehicle.
Okay.
So you're physically removed. And when you were saying, it's easier to take a house, I have the best war stories. You and I were talking last time. I was acting for one of the major banks, and I think they're 2-3 years behind on their mortgage repayments. We issued the notices. They did vacate. And I got a phone call, I think it was like 2:30, 3 in the morning, from the court bailiff who was attending with the Queensland Fire Services. They'd set fire to their home. They actually burnt the home down rather than hand it to the bank. And what I was not expecting was a phone call almost exactly 24 hours later. They came back and they burnt it again. So they burnt it twice. They would rather burn down the home than hand it over to the bank. That's the most dramatic case that I've had. And having to call the bank supervisor the next business day and explain, the house is burnt down. I think you need to speak with Queensland Fire Services and have it cordoned off and made safe. Yeah, they've just made good. They would have demolished it, cleaned it up and just sold the land. And then I think we went after the owners for the shortfall, would have bankrupted them. But that's the most dramatic. I've never had someone burn their house down.
Yeah, that's absolutely mental. It's a bit of a scorched earth policy. If I'm not going to have it, no one's going to have it. And so just chop it down. I don't care. I'm going bankrupt. And, a big FU to everybody involved. You're not going to be able to reclaim this. So probably some mental health problems there.
I don't know. That is pretty dramatic. Most of the time with debt collection, particularly with individuals, there's normally a central tragedy that's happened. Either spouses are sick or children are sick or the person themselves are sick, or maybe they've been in a car accident, or there's been job layoffs, or there's normally some human crisis that you try and assist the person with. Burning down your house or shooting at the agent because they want to take the car back is unusual. I just have a good collection because I've been doing this for so long. But generally, individuals are pretty, a mixed bag. You have the mum who calls you from her hospital because she got the letter of demand. There's a tragedy that's happened. She's put it down. She's now found it. She thought everything was changing and she's discovered that she owes you 20 grand. Can you work with me? Or you get the businessman who he had a factory based in China for steel production, and for whatever reason, there's no steel coming out of China anymore. He owes $400,000 to the bank. I've never been late on a payment before. Can you work with me? So in those situations, we do the best we can to recognize the people in front of you, but also keep it commercial, because debts need to be repaid, but you also don't want to destroy people's lives in the process. So, and there's a big difference between debtors who can't pay versus debtors who won't pay. It's definitely a mindset thing. And for people who can't, so I'm talking people who are, say, jobless, homeless, they've lost everything, they have nothing left to lose. Bankrupting them, to be honest, is probably throwing good money after bad, because you're not going to get your money back. Versus, say, the businessman who it's a matter of principle and over his dead body. Because he paid anything. He could if he wanted to, but he's not going to voluntarily. It's a completely different dynamic what we do.
Yeah, shit's got to hit the fan when somebody keeps going on about the principle, and it's the principle. Yes. That's why I want to do this. It's the principle. Things are going to go crazy. Yeah.
The best example of principle I have is I acted for this older gentleman. When I say older, they're in their 80s, I think. The older brother, And he'd lent his younger brother, who was also like in his 80s, I think it was $5,000. It was nominal. The younger brother refused, and this older gentleman was like, right, we're going to go him. You go get my $5,000 back. And I was like, okay. We did a full trial. You don't go to trial normally for $5,000, but his baby brother was going to pay him back. And he's the first client that has ever framed the judgment on his wall. He was so chuffed. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, he was just happy that a judge agreed that he was right and his brother was wrong. He owed him the $5,000 plus cost plus interest. The brother, as soon as he got the judgment, he didn't concede defeat. He made a phone call, walked across the street and bankrupted himself. And he was not giving, he didn't care what a court judge said. He was not giving his brother the $5,000. It was, I've never had that where both it was the principal thing, and not over 5,000. Like most people would have written it off and called it quitsies, but not these two gentlemen. It's the first time I've had such a happy client with a piece of paper, and we never did get the money. That was an interesting one.
Well, look, what would be the minimum type of debt that we're talking about that's worth pursuing in a legal fashion? You know, before it starts to become a bit silly, like at what point, what amount should we be looking at?
It depends on the person in front of you. So I have had instructions to recover debts as low as $500. They tend to not go all the way through to a trial judgment situation. The costs are prohibitive.
It's more of like a wake-up call for that person and being like, hey, I'm taking this seriously.
Yeah. Shake the tree, see if something falls out of it. And for $500, particularly now with QCAT in a self-represented jurisdiction, it's far more cost economical for those lower sums. Generally, to keep it commercial, for me, being someone who likes maths, I tend to think debts below 20,000 are very hard to keep commercial. And that's the main leverage, to try and get them settled as early as possible, because for every dollar that you're expending as the creditor to recover your debt, if the other person is fighting, they are also paying almost dollar for dollar to oppose that. So you rapidly come to a point of, why am I spending 10, 15 grand to recover 20? This is silly. And they normally settle. Statistically, most matters, commercial matters, settle long before you ever reach a trial, and the system is designed for
What about like very small debts? You know, we often get a lot of inquiries about people that, for example, don't want to pay their phone bill, or they received like a parking ticket, you know, in a shopping center or something, and it's $100, and they're worried and they say, look, should I be paying this? And then what happens if I don't pay it? What's the likelihood of that escalating to court proceedings? Because as you just said, if it's a low amount, it's almost not worth the creditor's while to pursue that. And so quite rarely, I think, you would actually see court action in there, particularly if it's unsecured and, you know, it's just maybe a one-off and they can't really do that much about it. Should people be worried about those types of debts?
It depends.
Best lawyer answer ever.
I know, every lawyer says the more experienced you are, the less you say. It depends. This comes with a huge disclaimer. It depends. It depends on what the debt is, what state you're in, and who is issuing it. If it's a fine, it's a proper fine. So you got a parking ticket from the police, go get some legal advice. If it's perhaps don't just choose to not pay it because it's too small, they won't come after you. There's this thing in Queensland called SPUR. They will go after you for library ticket fines, which can impact your credit rating if they get judgment for that. If you haven't paid your council rates, again, councils, particularly in Queensland, are more likely to progress that because it's government money that they're spending, right? And people need to pay their fines. If it's, I don't know, you ordered 20 pineapples and didn't pay $40,
yeah.
You know, that's a matter for you if you don't want to pay. Is there a reason you can't pay your $40? You shouldn't have ordered
Yeah. And karma will come around and get you if you're doing that. But the courts won't.
If somebody called me and said, I owe $140 for pineapples and I don't want to pay it, I want to, you know, or the other way, so I sent pineapples and I want to sue, I'd be like, oh, are you? Are you sure? You're happy to send a letter of demand. And that's normally when you start laying out the realistic costs for people and just set their expectations back.
Yeah.
And generally, people are pretty savvy. And for those low amounts, they can sort it out themselves. Where people do get caught is in their Complex contracts, things like phones, particularly for office spaces where you've got several handsets and several connections and there's internet and you're leasing the printer as part of this and there's some subscription for ink and then the handsets don't work and they're not compatible with your existing computer system or your internet and you read some of those clauses in there and gosh, mercenary, some of those. So those are definitely ones that I would recommend legal advice on because some of those contract terms I would say are definitely in breach of our ACCC protections. And you also are entitled to get what you contract for, which is working products. So with those situations, it becomes less of a debt problem and more of a quality of provision of goods and services problem. And for a lot of people, they just focus on, if you're the creditor, they just want the money. And if you're the person who owes the money, you're not paying it until you get what you want. And that's normally where it becomes more complex, and having legal assistance is really recommended.
Okay. So along your career, are there any particular standout stories in terms of cases where there's been some absurd claims or different things that you've tried to recover?
So many. The most dramatic ones are, I think I mentioned, I had the agent that was shot at when he was trying to recover a car. It had been used in a drug bust. And so he was trying to get the vehicle from where it was delivered in exchange. That didn't go down so well. We just left the vehicle there. I've had a yacht that was taken by the wife and her boyfriend and trying to recover the yacht, and it went from the Gold Coast Marina down to New South Wales way. And so I had the standoff between the New South Wales police for their jurisdiction and the Queensland police for their jurisdiction, and this boat kept drifting between the two. And a court bailiff who kept ringing me, because under maritime law, the notice to seize a vessel needs to be put on the mast of the boat, and there isn't a mast on a yacht. And so he was calling me to say, do I put it on the, I don't even know what it's called. Like, do I put it on the windscreen? Do I put it on the steering wheel?
On the steering wheel.
I don't care. Just grab the keys or whatever it is. It ended up being solved because in trying to take the keys, the boyfriend took a swing at one of the New South Wales police. So they arrested him. She ended up in the water. Not sure whether she was slipped or pushed, but the keys ended up in the water. So they solved it for me because the Queensland police took the boat, which is what I wanted, and the New South Wales police arrested them for assaulting police officers. And the bailiff, I think, was just happy to get onto dry land and just told me, here's your boat, get on with it. So that was nice and dramatic. And the other one I've done was fairly early on. It was a Friday afternoon. It's always a Friday afternoon. Everything in law for commercial litigation, everything happens at 3:30 on a Friday. And when all the partners have gone, it's just you holding the fort. And we'd spent the week getting an injunction. And an injunction is an order which specifically directs someone to do something or not do something. And I think they're disproportionately expensive for what they are. But we'd spent $40,000 getting this injunction that the director needed to give us the plane, little Cessna plane, twin engine, back. And we'd seen him, as soon as the orders were made, we'd seen him leg it out the courtroom. So we're like, oh no, get to the airport. So my job was to go and find the airplane. And they don't teach you how to do that in law school. They don't teach you how to stop a plane, September 11 and all of that. So you could actually look up in the yellow pages the phone number for the
airport
tower. I'm trying to get hold of the tower.
And what, you called up the airport?
Yeah, I had to get hold of the tower and say, don't let this plane go. And it was only in the middle of that conversation, I was like, do I need air support security to get the keys? I don't know. Do planes have keys, or is there a button, or is there a handbrake? How do you stop a plane taking off? Because if it had taken off, it could go anywhere, right?
Yeah. I imagine planes maybe have a
clicker
for your car.
Flaps down.
Unlock.
Flaps down, flaps up. And we'd seen the director leg it out the courtroom and was heading for the airport. So he did get to the airport. He had caught a flight out of the country, but we were able to get the plane. But yeah, that's one of my most bizarre Friday afternoons. And I just remember my boss calling me and he's like, so do you know where the plane is? And I was like, I really hope so. I really hope we've got the right plane grounded, because otherwise I've got some explaining to do. But yeah, there's ones that stay with you. Some are too sad, and other ones, you run the gamut of emotions in a day. In the morning you're talking to a businessman who's really, that's the numbers, that's the offer, that's the deal, that's what we're prepared to pay. A couple hours later, you can have a lady sobbing, just human tragedy story. So you run the gamut of emotions. But I always try to leave people better for their interaction with us. As you say, we're people too. I'd say most lawyers in this space are actually, we're risk adverse, and we actually don't like disputes. I'd rather have it resolve. And if I can keep it commercial as well, that's a win for everybody. But I had a situation where I was acting for a very elite private school, and when their debt book came to me, there were quite a few digits. I ended up doing myself out of a job, Hader. That's the problem with these, because
collected all the money, was it?
Yeah, I collected all the money, and I fixed their credit applications, and we got tighter at screening students and parents, because it was well known that this particular principal will let the students finish their year 11 and 12, so at the time they could get their OP. So parents enroll their kids in year 10, pay all through year 10, and then we hit financial difficulties in 11 and 12 right when the fees are at its highest, and then they just don't pay, and the kids get to graduate school with this la-di-da school on their leaving certificate.
That's sad, because it's just people taking advantage of somebody being nice and wanting to do the right thing for the kids and get them through their education.
And then they send me in once the kid graduates. The reason I mention is because instead of being like aggression or sad or tragedy, this one actually I was really left with a sense of, I was so proud of this family. I'm not sure what happened to Mum. She was out the picture. Dad was in a car accident, or he wasn't able to work. He was on a disability pension. And the son, he finished his 11 and 12, but Dad wasn't in a position to pay the school fees. So once he finished, the school sent me after them. And this lad, with his little job at McDonald's, he sent me a very nice email that he will pay, his $140, I think it was a week or a fortnight, from his little Macca's job. And every week that kid's money popped into my little trust account, and Dad put in what he could. He paid it all through like the first and second year. He basically paid his year 11 and 12 tuition. And it came down to like the last term's fees. And I called the school and was like, come on, like the kid did good. Like, he's down to like $3,000 or something. Like, what do you reckon? And they were like, yeah, wipe it. And the school was good because they didn't charge interest. We didn't pass on the legal fees. And he really personified good parenting and like everything that the school had stood for.
Yeah.
And I'm just so proud of him. Like all these years later, I was like, I'm proud of you, mate. Like, I don't know many 18-year-olds that would pay their year 11 and 12 tuition for their schooling. But that was a good one. And then you get other families where you're like, gosh, someone was not hugged enough as a child. Because, gosh, so I used to do contested deceased estates. So that's exactly what it sounds like, where we've got a deceased and then you've got family members dissatisfied with what they've been gifted under the will. Or maybe there isn't a will, and that's a whole other story. But you might think, why am I as a commercial litigation debt collector doing that? Because it's the same principles. It's the same it's the same steps that you go through. And on this one, Dad had passed away in Queensland, and he had 2 children, one in Canada, one in England. And Dad had been fairly fair in a 50-50 split, like with the exchange rates and the 3 different currencies. It was pretty fair. And it worked out roughly that they were going to get $3 million each. I mean, like £3 million and $3 million Canadian dollars. I realize that it's not the same, but fairish. And you'd think that would be easy, but we've spent 14 months arguing about a rocking horse. Hater. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Really? With your $3 million, you can't just buy a rocking horse?
Yeah, but was it between siblings?
It was between siblings, so a brother and sister.
There was some kind of sentimental value of this rocking horse, or was it?
I never got to the bottom of it. There was my client, she wanted the rocking horse, and the evil brother had taken it to Canada, and he said he didn't know what she was talking about. Then he suddenly remembered, but he lost it. And she wanted private investigators to go get this rocking horse. And I was just like, I will buy you a rocking horse. Please sign the court orders, please. And I'm also going to mention that they were both in their 60s. So this is not a rocking horse that, she was going to use. Or maybe she was, but...
Maybe she was, I don't know.
Maybe she was, but there is... but in just about in every deceased estate case that I've done, and I've done a fair few, there is always a rocking horse, and it might take the form of a blue vase or this magic painting that no one has seen for decades, or this jewelry that no one even really remembers what it looks like, but it was definitely promised to, all 6 daughters. All 6 apparently were going to get mum's opal, pearl, whatever that no one has seen since the photo of her wedding day. There's always that one thing.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think, whilst it makes the job interesting, for me, it is a gap in our legal system, particularly with commercial and money. The court isn't really designed for that human grey scope. The court's not really interested. It just wants to talk about dollars and cents and fairness. It doesn't really have scope for, childhood memories of my rocking horse, or when I'd hug mum, that's what she'd smell like with her perfume, and that's the jewelry that was right there. Like, it doesn't translate in that. So being able to navigate those human emotions and stories within our legal framework, giving everybody their dignity, but also getting the doing the job that you're supposed to do with grace and dignity is it's a delicate balance.
Sometimes I get the feeling that litigants, they're at the finish line and they could cross it, but there might be a sense of addiction, or like this feeling of wanting to continue the fight or battle, and they feel like they haven't had enough almost. So they will kind of create these rocking horse situations and be like, no, we've got to deal with this one thing. And they make it this, a mountain out of a molehill. And sometimes I think it might be because they don't want to give up the fight yet, because they feel like they need to keep fighting, whether it's because they're enjoying the feeling of litigation or fighting, or they don't feel vindicated and they haven't felt that sense of relief that it's over. So I do think there's a bit of a combination of that sometimes.
Yeah. I think it's a sense of control and power. It does depend on the participants. In a way, it's easier if everybody is literally just business. And those mediations and settlement conferences tend to be far more productive, because you get people making their first best offers. They just want to get in, get out, get their money, move on with their business. It's when there's those personal, it's the principle of the thing. Like those 2 gentlemen I mentioned, like, there's $5,000. It wasn't about $5,000.
No.
It was about the younger brother had always got everything and he's not getting this. 80 years worth of, you've always been the favorite. That's what it was about. But our legal system doesn't have, we can't legislate good behavior amongst people. And that is often where the real nuance comes in, because a lot of creditors are businesses and the debtors are people. So we've got this disconnect, because for the individuals who owe the money, it is personal, it is emotional based. And for your creditors, it's money based. And I'm pretty good at what I do. But sometimes, you can have all the bits of paper in the world, but if this person has quit their job so that you can't enforce the garnishee of wages on them, and so they're not working, they're hiding out in their neighbours, cousins, hairdressers, granny flats, they don't have anything. And you've got a creditor who says that they're owed X amount of money, and you just can't get money from empty pockets. And a lot of creditors do struggle with that, because they're so used to operating in a realm of money comes in, money goes out, I gave you a product, you pay for it. And then to suddenly hit this person where they've done everything right, we've got the piece of paper that says they owe this money, and you just can't get the money out of them. That is a real frustration as well. And it really is a good solicitor's job to explain those pitfalls at the beginning. So I'll often say to people, I'm lovely, but 6 months of talking to me and me asking you questions, you won't think I'm so lovely. You'll be quite sick of me.
It's a good point, because, as a solicitor, I think, you've got to manage those expectations and give the client an understanding of the process and realistic outcomes from the beginning. And then that makes them more comfortable with the process. It's kind of like, what I feel when I go to a doctor. If you think about it, when you go to a doctor, what would you really do? You'd go there and they might be like, oh, we're going to prescribe you this, or we need to do this operation on you. And then you kind of just sit there and say, okay, pretty much most of the time. But a good doctor will then explain why they're doing certain things, or why they need to give you certain medication and the effect it's going to have on your body, and maybe explain a few options. And part of that, my understanding is that part of that is it gives you the ability to choose. It gives you a good understanding as to what your outcomes are. And it actually helps with your own healing as to whatever you're going through, whatever condition you're going through. Because when you have a good understanding as to what your body is going through and what the treatment actually is, it actually helps your body in preparing for and treating that within. So I think that's kind of similar here, where if you've given them the understanding as to the legal processes, they can it starts to sink into their brain so that they understand, okay, this is what I'm in for, these are my possible outcomes, and they can start reconciling it and it starts making sense. And if you do that at the beginning, then you're going to have a smoother process, I think, throughout. So it's a good point.
It also gives you your power back as a claimant. Because also as solicitors, we're creatures of instructions. And so the person giving you the instructions does actually have to understand what it is that they're instructing you to do. And that's why good solicitors really encourage people to settle their matters themselves, because you can then account for that human aspect. So I've had mediations where all the money is sorted and she'll sign if she hears the words, I'm sorry. You're not going to get an I'm sorry in a courtroom. You might get it in a mediation settlement. You might get it in a late night text, but that's the closure that they actually need. Whereas if you walk into a courtroom, we've prepared as much as possible, and our judicial system does remarkably well. But once you walk into that courtroom, you lose all your power and you are handing it to an individual who maybe has an afternoon to get across 4 years worth of your life. And you're looking for a sorry. They're not going to give you a sorry. They can't. And giving people their own power, but also explaining of what the legal system can do. So I spend most of my time actually talking. I shouldn't tell you as my boss this. I spend most of my time dissuading people, starting court cases, because I've been doing this for so long. You can tell when people don't have that stamina. And once you're on that treadmill, it will be cost prohibitive to get off. You can't just wake up, you can't wake up on Monday and sue someone and by Friday you're like, oh yeah, no, I'm not going to bother anymore. You can't do that. Once we're on this treadmill until a specific point and I can get you off, you're on it for the long haul. And long haul could be 3 months, 6 months. I think the longest case I've run is 2 years. So once you're on, you're on. But I got a phone call from one gentleman and he's laying it all the detail out for me. And he definitely had a good case. It was definitely a case that I was keen on taking and assisting him with. And he just said, I'm tired at the moment with a new baby. And I was like, how old's Bubby? And he was like, a week. It's bad birth, wife's in hospital. Oh, no. I'm lovely, but no. This is a whole new level of stress on your marriage and your home and your business that you don't need. Call me in 6 months. Let's reassess where you're at. His wife called me 8 months to say, we still want to go ahead, but I want to say thank you, because we couldn't have done what he wanted to do during the last 8 months. And they had a far better outcome. So sometimes just because you want to go and let's do it now and everybody's revved up and, you're get my money back. Sometimes just taking that breather, taking account of the whole person, the whole picture, focus your marriage, focus on your home, focus on the kids. Because once you've got that foundation, because it's stressful. Litigation is stressful. It takes a lot of training to have that resilience, to be in constant. It's not even conflict. It's just opposing of views and opinions, and it's a fight. I mean, we don't have the fight as solicitors, which is why we managed to keep that emotion out of it. But for you as the individual who either owes the money or wants the money back, it's very stressful. And bringing that into your life, you need someone there who can hold your hand. But we can't hold your hand to save your marriage or your business, or your best friends walked off with half your company. How dare he? Yeah, when you mix money and friends or money and family, that's where it gets. Ooh. Well, the wife goes off with your yacht and the boyfriend ends up getting arrested for assaulting police. That must have been an awkward phone call.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Kirsten. Well, on that note, it's been great to have you on the show. We wish you all the best. And happy 19 years in the legal profession. Yes. Hopefully another 19 more. And
we'll see what today brings.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, and great to have you, and we wish you all the best. Thanks, Kirsten.
Thanks so much, Hayden.